Hi, this is Graeme Daniels again. I am a psychotherapist from Northern California and also the author of a novel called Venus Looks Down on a Prairie Vole, which is based in part on my work as a psychotherapist with sex addicts and sex offenders. And my novel is a satire, it's a social comment and a drama. And this is the second video describing the novel and its relevance to some, topical issues of the day regarding sex addiction, sex offending, and the responsibilities of psychotherapists to report such behavior to authorities, and my novel and my area of interest in how that impacts the profession, which in turn impacts how my profession can help provide mental health treatment to the community. So one of the basic questions posed here is, does the public's need for information, the public's need to protect against certain heinous crimes committed, outweigh or supersede an individual's right to privacy, and what is the effectiveness of treatment wherein privacy is compromised? Well, the public's general answer to the question is that their need for information and to prevent crimes most certainly does outweigh any individual's right for privacy. And when the issue, I think, is framed in a fairly simplistic way, it's rather easy to pass laws like AB 1775, which was promoted as that which would crack down on child pornography. Actually, that was only thinly, its purpose, and it's a law that went into effect in January of last year with little, if any, opposition, and that's because it was promoted as a bill that would crack down on child porn. It's actually going to do very little of that. But to get back to the subject, general subject of the treatment of so-called sex offenders, which I said in the last video is an umbrella term, this prejudice in society, this inclination of how to see the issue in a simplistic way, leads to or generates a system whereby sex offenders receive psychotherapeutic treatment, ostensibly, under the watchful eyes of police authority, meaning individuals are ordered into treatment with providers like myself. I worked under a state body called the California Sex Offender Management Board for a few years. I'm now no longer associated with that organization. And the idea is that therapists are meant to just report to authorities what is disclosed to them in therapy. Things such as an individual's continued use of pornography or instances of visiting a prostitute, things like these behaviors would be that which is supposed to be reported to police or probation, and on the basis of that information, police would decide or not. In more cases, they would decide to violate an individual's probation, incarcerate them. And this is, again, someone's idea of, mental health treatment, and it's a problem because it certainly begs the question, or two questions. One is, why would an individual, knowing this sort of chain of communication exists, why would they be honest in psychotherapy? And if you can't be honest, what's the point of psychotherapy? Why not just use polygraphs and just dispense with the pretense of providing a mental health service? A mental health service which is sort of destined to be ineffective, which in turn reinforces a prejudice that mental health treatment is not effective for sex offenders who are deemed to be a priori antisocial personalities, or the treatment model is predicated on the notion that all sex offenders are alike. antisocial personalities, and this is sort of a vicious cycle argument. And by the way, the notion that all sex offenders are alike, both in terms of their antisocial qualities and other factors, has been quite thoroughly debunked by some researchers, not in the United States, tellingly enough, but rather in Canada. If you're interested, you can check out, Google, that is, the names Michael Seto, that's S-E-T-O, or Carl Hansen, who produce research distinguishing different types of sex offenders and their variable risk to the community. It's important research. So to my story somewhat, which is a dramatization of these sorts of issues that I've been talking about privately and publicly for over the last year, and going on radio talk shows and being a radio talk show and being quoted in the Los Angeles Times about this issue. You know, my story, Venus Looks Down on a Prairie Vole, that's the title. Understand that Venus refers here to a kind of female figure, and a prairie vole is it's a monogamous rodent. That's so it refers to elements of the main character, and how he's a widower, and how his deceased wife is looking down upon him from heaven. So that's just to explain a little bit about the rather obscure title. But in the story that relates to sex offenders is the following. A jaded psychologist by the name of Daniel Pierce is sort of seduced or accosted, stalked, all these words are sort of appropriate, by an ex-prostitute who approaches him and demands information about one of his patients, whom she says she has knowledge that he has committed a molest of his 5-year-old son. And she's learned this through some sort of surreptitious communication with this patient's wife, who is fronting the accusation. This ex-prostitute is an activist, an advocate for women who are caught up in the prostitute lifestyle, and she's looking to help reform them, and also to help reform or redeem men, or Johns as they are dubbed, through providing kind of education. Anyway, Daniel, my protagonist, is skeptical of all this, and particularly what she is saying of his patient, and above all he wants to protect that patient's privacy unless given a compelling reason not to, and this is not it. He thinks it possible, perhaps even probable, that the accusations of molestation are manufactured in order to leverage a favorable custody evaluation because the patient and his spouse are divorcing. And this is based upon the phenomena, the real-life phenomena that child abuse reports made in the context of a divorce or a custody dispute double across the nation those child abuse reports that are made outside of that context. So it's a very real issue that's happening in family courts across the country. And also that this accusation is based upon prejudice about what is sex addiction, what is the line between sex addiction and sex offending behavior, and are people who look at porn, or people who go to prostitutes, or people who look drugs, are they necessarily people who are at risk of committing heinous crimes such as child abuse? So these are some of the issues that form the subtext of this story of this man who is grieving over the loss of his wife and looking to take a hiatus from his workplace. Anyway, that's the story. You can find out more about it if you read my blog, which is www.graemedaniels.wordpress.com. Graeme is spelled G-R-A-E-M-E. The novel title, again, is Venus Looks Down on a Prairie Vole. And it's a story that I think will grip your attention, perhaps galvanize your thoughts, and make you maybe confront a prejudice or two of your own about what is a very delicate subject matter in the culture right now. Anyway, thanks for listening to my video. Check out my book if you are so inclined. Thanks a lot.